Okay, really quick before we jump into this, it's come to my attention I forgot to add this in a previous video, showing you guys that there was in fact $4,000 transferred into a NinjaTrader account, so it is live. Okay, this is not simulated money. I just forgot to place it into that other video. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead. Let's jump right into this next video. So if you take a look at the 15-minute, on the 15-minute we have a couple different zones I was looking at. So we had this 15-minute fair value gap, this 15-minute fair value gap, and this 15-minute fair value gap. So when we opened up this morning, we ended up selling off, or came down tapped off of this fair value gap, and then we proceeded to head higher. So we jump over to where I was taking trades. Went to take my first initial sell point off of the first bounce of this 15-minute, but I was waiting for a little more confirmation. I was wanting to enter in just solely off of this break right here. Didn't quite get that. Once we had that break, I wanted to see maybe us tap this fair value gap, and right here there's a really small fair value gap, but I mean it's not enough for me to really even call it that. But I was hoping that we'd get a retracement back up into here before maybe selling off to the downside. So initially it was this bounce at the 15-minute with the break, but I wanted to see more, right? And so me trying to outsmart the market, trying to just capitalize on the most, which don't ever do that because obviously you can see it didn't work out for me. I wanted to see us retrace back up into this fair value gap. So when we got this first break structure candle from what was initially a trend downwards, we then got this break. I entered it off the break, and then we ended up getting stopped out right down here. So we bounced off of this, we got a break, and then I wanted to see a retracement up in here before heading lower. But we just didn't get the retracement that I initially wanted. And a little pro tip, if you're trading ES or the NASDAQ, if you look here on ES and NASDAQ, they're pairs to one another, meaning they will mirror each other's exact movements 95% of the time. So when we get a fair value gap here, we get a fair value gap over here, right around the same time. When we break structure here, we did not break structure here. So what I have found to help out with fake outs is if you don't see it mirror over on the other end, when they're both not mirroring each other, a lot of times it could be a fake out. So where we got a break of structure here, but we didn't here, it just ended up resulting in a sell-off. The same thing could happen like if we take out a high, but it doesn't take out a high on the other side. It could result in plays that you could capitalize off of, right? When it takes out a high but it's on one, but it doesn't take a high out on the other, it's called an SMT, right? You could find yourself finding an SMT. If you don't know what that is, you can Google it on YouTube, and there's a plenty of explanations on what an SMT is. Essentially, it just means like when the high is taken out on one or the other, but not on both, it creates what's called an SMT. Where I ended up missing the entry for the shorts that I was initially looking at, but I was trying to capitalize on these longs, just a quick scalp, if you will, was when we rebroke here. So we broke structure here to the upside, and we rebroke right here to the downside, where I would have entered with stops above these highs, but we didn't quite get that because I was mainly focused on the fact that I just got stopped out and then ended up, doing the play that I was looking for, which you shouldn't never go against your bias to begin with, but that's just kind of what happened today. And I'll give you another example of what I mean about the fact that these two are pairs and how they mirror one another. So if you look at this next play from when we entered in, right? So on the left is ES, on the right is NQ. 5 minute, both bouncing out this 5 minute fair value gap after what was a retracement from bouncing off this 15 up here. So we inverse this fair value gap, we inverse this fair value gap, right? Both of which are inversed. We then have a fair value gap that we now retrace down into before we proceeded to head higher. Same thing over here on ES. When we break structure here, we end up breaking structure here, right? So they're mirroring one another, meaning that that's a good sign that generally you're not going to have a fake out, which is what we ended up being able to capitalize on. Now, the better entry actually would have been to have waited when ES broke, because ES didn't break the same time NQ did. It broke basically a minute right after, right at 11:44, or over here at 11:44, but we broke at 11:43 on NQ, which I was already entered off of that, a little predetermined. With stops, my stops were right below this here, so I was in for about 18, and I ended up getting right around 26, which obviously you can see it proceeded to head higher. Now I'll tell you why I did sell here. So we had this fair value gap here. I was only expecting us to retrace to this point I did not expect us to blow past this, and I'll show you why I didn't expect us to do that. So if you look right here, we ended up breaking structure on the 5 minutes. So a higher time frame was telling me that we broke structure that we could potentially be heading lower. I only thought that we were going to get back up inside this 5 minute fair value gap before we were going to head lower, right? But we ended up re-breaking right at 11:45. So when 11:45 closed, we broke structure. You want to know where 11:45 was? Right here. Yeah, I was already out at 11:44. So I was only going off of just the retracement on the 5 minute. So I thought we were just going to trace on the 5 minute and head lower. So I chose this 1 minute as like a TP point to get out because we could have only retraced to here before coming down and taking out these lows. So that's just kind of the thought process for why I exited here, right? So anybody can say like, oh, you could have held for so much longer. Why don't you just trail your stop loss, blah, blah, blah. Well, if I trailed my stop loss, like even below here, like this area would have been screwed, right? Even if I put it below this fair value gap, I would have got stopped out there. So like that's predetermining where to place it. You could just put it at break even, but then I wouldn't have made any money. And the way I like to make money is really fast. So if this play isn't just going to rapidly increase, and I've already identified areas of where it could reverse at, I'm going to take my profit. So let's jump over to the last play. This play was a scalp, right? I already predetermined that before I even placed the trade. Why? Major sell-off. I mean, we had almost zero resistance to the upside here. And we had just these two candles. The rest of it was just straight downwards. And the moment we got this rejection candle, I waited for this fake out move right here. So we faked out as it went down. The moment this turned green, started to turn green, I entered, and then I just went for right around a 1-to-1. I did sell when it was up here, but this happened so fast that I just didn't get a good sell. So if you look at where it was, 24, 25 for about 27, so a little less than 1-to-1. I did try to get out at 40, but it didn't let me. Like just the fill didn't happen the way I wanted it to happen. I also did not expect us to just ride this wave all the way up, which does suck when you go back and look at it. You think about what could have been, right? But as a trader, you shouldn't even do that to begin with because it could be harmful. So in the end, we did end up being relatively very positive on the day, which is always good. But that wraps up this trade recap. I'll catch you guys in the next one.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think